Hi, welcome to Chapter 3. In this chapter, we're going to cover the pelvis ribcage mass. We're going to start with the backside, working on the trapezius, latissimus dorsi, the scapula area, and the gluteus maximus muscles. Then we're going to go to the front side and work on the pectoralis major, the abdominal muscles, the external obliques, and the ribcage area. Let's get started. Alright, let's zoom into the torso area. I'm going to select the edges right there and there, do an edge loop split to the center. Let's go to these points. I'm going to just push these up and select them again and push them in a little bit. I want to define the pectoralis major a little bit. Alright, let's spin him to the back. I think the geometry needs one edge loop split going all the way through the center of the body. Let me zoom in here. Okay, deselect those. Select this edge down the center and do an edge loop split. That'll carry it through the top of the head and down through the pelvis and the front. Pull them together a little bit. That'll define where the spinal column will be. I'm going to move around the edges right alongside it, a little outward, spacing them out evenly, rounding out the form. Now select these 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 faces. Extrude them out. Scale them together a little bit. Now this will define where the trapezius and scapula areas of the back are. Move around the points around it. Now select the 2 faces at the bottom of the trapezius and spin them down and inward. And at the top, select the 2 polygons there, spin them up, and the ones right next to it, spin them, and delete the edge between them, because they have 2 edges between them now. Move around the points, shaping the trapezius a little bit as it flows up into the neck. And let's spin these 2 faces side by side. Oops. Spin those down, and the ones beneath them down, and delete the 2 edges they share in the middle. That defines our deltoid area a little better. Let's move this up and go into the back image plane view. And now we're just going to move around the points, lining it up to the back image plane that I've loaded in, and making sure that our geometry matches up, not completely, but as close as it can to the topology of the model in the image plane. At this stage, we're just going to approximate as best we can. Our topology can't accommodate the complexity of the image plane pictures. As we develop the model, we'll constantly refine it and make it more approximating the topology of the actual model. But for now, just move around these points, line things up a little. Okay. Everything kind of sort of matches up. Let's move around the edges right at the top here, lining up the trapezius. Alright. Let's go back into the perspective view. Look around. The back is looking pretty good for now. Move around these points a little, pulling out the geometry. Rotate to the front. Let's work on the chest. It's a little wide there. First I want to define where the ribcage area is. That's why I'm going to pull these points down, round out the form here. Bottom part of the ribcage, over top of the abdomen. Looks like it needs another edge loop. Let's do one of those through there. That way we can define the ribcage a little more clearly, with more geometry. Move around these points, pull them forward. Always model in all views, rotating your model as you go. Pull out these points, define the pecs a little more. Whoops. I'm just going to line things up before I extrude for some more adding geometry to the chest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's extrude those out, and now switch the scale mode, center it on the x-axis, and scale it together. Push it forward. Okay. Now we always want our topology to follow the topology of the actual muscle structure of the body. So that's why I'm going to do some modifications here. And generally I do that so that less geometry is necessary to complete the form. If our topology follows the topology of the muscle structure, then it'll take less geometry to successfully create it in 3D. Move around these points here. And now I'm going to select these two faces. Whoops. Using Spin Faces tool again, spin them down and outward. Now we're trying to get the geometry of the chest area to match what would be on the actual pectoralis muscle that's attached to the sternum and the clavicle and inserts underneath the deltoid. Okay, I added an edge loop there at the neck, the base of the neck. Round out the form there. Alright, this part's going to get, well, let me do an edge loop split around here. This part's going to get a little tricky in the chest area. So watch carefully, you may have to watch this a couple of times. Edge loop split around for the defining the rib cage a little more. Alright. Point tweaking. Takes forever, but you can't stop doing it because your mesh is never really done. So always keep refining it. Alright, let's move into the chest. Edge loop split tool. Actually, let me move these edges up right here, the center of the chest. Push them back, and now let's switch to the edge loop split tool. I'm going to split from that edge that I already had right to the top of the pecs and leave that there. Now I'm going to do another edge loop, not an edge loop, sorry, split poly, right alongside the one I just made, just underneath it. This may look a little confusing, but it'll all work out, trust me. Another snap there to the one we created. Now we've created a triangle, 5-sided polygon beneath that. Again, right alongside it, and delete the edge in the center. Alright, that looks a little weird, but I will fix it. Alright, move around the geometry a little, space things out. I'm just trying to define the pectoralis major muscle better. Now I'm going to solve the 5 poly problem at the bottom there. Using split poly, I'm going to go down through alongside the abdomen and through the center of the mesh, and I will close off the triangle I made at the bottom there to the corner right there. Now I'll zoom back in on the chest and do another split poly through the center of the abdomen to the center of the chest and snap it to there. Alright, now all quads again, no triangles, no 5-sided. And now we're going to spin faces at the bottom here to see if this will work. Okay, all the way around. Nope, that's not going to work for us. Let's try the ones right next to it. Spin that once all the way around. I think that's going to work well. You'll get a better hang of spinning faces after a while. It's hard to know when to do it. Alright, I think that'll work better. And then spin the two, one right by the bicep and the one on the chest right there. There. Now we have the flow of the pectoralis major muscle going from the sternum and clavicle underneath the deltoid and over top of the bicep. Alright, now let's move on to the abdomen. Okay, we're going to add an edge loop right here. Spin it around. I think it needs one more. I'm going to take these points, pull them up a bit. Alright, a little more. Pull those points up. Now let's do another edge loop right underneath here. Alright. Let's define the external obliques a little bit, rounding out the forms there. Always refer to your reference images. Even though I'm not going back and forth quite as much, I am referring to the sculpture that's in front of me constantly. Okay. I'm just going to squeeze these points together a little bit. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to select a bunch of faces and extrude the entire oval shape of the abdominal muscles. Okay, let's select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 faces. I'm going to extrude those out. I'm going to switch to scale, center it, move the pivot point to the center, and scale it from the center. And push it in just a little out too far. Pull out the edges alongside it, just to round out the form a little. So now we have the oval shape of the abdominal muscles. I'm just going to round out the forms now, defining the individual muscles within the abdominal muscle. I think I selected the wrong one there. Let me pull that back out. Yeah, it's the one above it. Okay. Always refer to your side view and front view. Alright. Let me select these points and round them out by pulling them out a bit. Alright, now I'm going to select the individual abdominal muscles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, extrude those out, scale it from their center, not the center of the mesh. Pull them out, do the same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, extrude it, scale it together. Then the next one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Scale that out from the center, move it forward a little. And now you're going to go through and round out the forms. You don't want to leave the geometry the way it is, otherwise when you smooth it, it's going to look very boxy. Always round out the forms whenever you add geometry. Okay, try to follow your reference images when you're doing this. Okay, we've got that. Round out the forms towards the back, shaping the abdominal muscles. Okay, let's go into the front view here and look at I have the front image plane in there again. I want to line up the rib cage and the abdominal muscles and see if they all line up. They line up pretty well here. Just making sure. Let's quickly add another line. I think we need to define the rib cage a little better. Pull that geometry down, round it out. Okay. Now let's go to the back. We need to define the geometry back there a little bit. Let me move these points up and around a little. Alright. Okay, let's take a look here. Alright, let me move these points out. I'm going to spread these out a little bit, because I'm going to be extruding some more geometry out soon. Alright, let's select 3 faces right here, 1, 2, 3. We're going to extrude out the erector spinae muscle. Scale that together. Scale it in. On the top one, I'm going to spin the faces. Select the faces 1, 2, and spin it back into the mesh. Spin it back into the form of the back. Alright. Now let's go right next to it here and spin these 2 faces back and the ones right underneath and downward. Okay, now what we're doing is we're lining up the latissimus dorsi muscles to flow around from the side all the way into the back. But I need more geometry to find that muscle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 faces. Make sure nothing else is selected. I think I did just to make sure. Go to view. Okay, nothing else selected. So extrude that. Scale it inward a little and down and in. So it looks a little messy, but that's okay. We can space everything out afterwards. I just needed to extrude to add more geometry. Alright, just move around points now. Now the reason why I added geometry here was because there was just too much spacing. I couldn't define the latissimus dorsi the way I wanted it to. I also changed the flow with the spinning of the faces. I'm going to spin these 2 inward. Alright, now round out the forms a little bit. Always look at your reference. Let's spin that one inward and move around the points. Okay, those points are too far inward. Let's select them all and pull them out. Alright. Let's select these three faces where the scapulary is, extrude them out. We're going to focus on the other muscles that are attached to the scapula a little later. For now, that's all we're going to do. Alright, let's move on to the next part right now. Let's go zoom in. Let's do the glutes next. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 polygons, I think. But the ones you see on screen, if you have to rewind, go ahead. So extrude those, scale it from their center, not the center of the mesh. Push it down, scale it out a little, and pull it out. I just wanted a little more geometry in the glute area, shape out the roundness of the form. Okay. I'm going to spin the two faces right here at the top and center. I want to shape the sacrum from these faces. Let's delete that edge that left from the spin. Hold on. Delete those two edges. If you delete one, it'll delete both that are sharing. Okay, space it out there. Alright. Bring those points up. Now let's make sure everything is rounded inward, right? Alright, now let's go back to the sacrum. Spin those two faces, round all the way. Okay, spin it that way, down from this erector spinae. That didn't work. I don't really like that. I'm going to spin that back to the way it was. I think I want to spin these two faces. Whoops. Let me try that again. Alright, make sure nothing else is selected. Extrude these out to define the sacrum a little better. Scale it from the center of the mesh inward, and now those two faces spin. Now those two faces. So we have the erector spinae flowing back into the glutes and the sacrum. So it looks a little more organic than just the extrudes by themselves would without the spinning of the faces. Alright, move around some points there. We're almost done with the torso area for now. Move around these points, look a little blocky. Remember, whenever you add geometry, round it out. And I didn't do that a little earlier when I first extruded for the glutes. Okay. Round out these shapes. I think we need to spin a few faces here. Let me pull that out. The sides. Let me spin these two and delete the edges they shared and delete the edges right underneath. Now that flows back down into the leg from the back. Remember, every time you extrude, make it flow back in by